The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, most of us have a workplace. Oftentimes it's an office. Sometimes it's a table in a random room at a random location in Utica, New York. But hey, you never know. But for our DOT highway workers, their office, more often than not, is the roadway. But for speeding and distracted drivers, it makes it a dangerous and even deadly space to work. And coming off the heels of National Work Zone Awareness Week, which kicks off construction season, we feel it is fitting that we're here in Utica, where DOT highway and maintenance workers are undergoing a safety training event.
And today you're going to hear from one of the event's main speakers, Karen Torres. Now, Karen understands the dangers highway workers face daily after losing her father, Patrick Mapleson, to a distracted driver who entered his own DOT work zone. She's going to share her family's story and also how she's really transformed her grief into a personal mission. As a safety advocate, she's pushing for stricter laws, protecting workers, and getting out there and sharing this message. And then we're going to also talk to DOT's own Cody Baker with our main office, Employee Safety and Health Office. He is here today to talk about our annual Workers Memorial event. If you don't know about it, it's a very special day for all of us and a very solemn day as we honor fallen highway workers who paid the ultimate sacrifice while on duty. Welcome, Cody and Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Karen, let's start off with you. We always like to say that we're a family here. We're one DOT. We just want to share with you that we're so sorry about what happened to your father. And we're just so glad that you're here to share this story so that we can not only honor your father's legacy through you in your advocacy, but also to set aside a moment to remember all these other fallen workers. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your dad? Who was he? And
well, my dad was a great guy. He was an extremely hard worker with everything, not just at work himself, but at home, always taking care of his kids, meaning, or us adult kids, making sure, our cars were always in the best shape, or if, we needed anything for our home, any help with any woodwork or anything. He was just very handsy, which we loved.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, about that day, about what happened and about how that affected you and your family.
Sure. So it was St. Patrick's Day of 2006. I absolutely hate St. Patrick's Day. Every February when those shamrocks start showing up at the store, my heart hurts. My dad's birthday was just the day before. He had just turned 66 and he was getting ready to retire in 7 months. And that was all taken away from him because of a distracted driver. He was, my dad and his crew were out filling in potholes on Long Island, and a cement truck driver had entered the work zone. He was speeding and he was distracted by a water bottle that had fallen from his hands. And when he reached down to pick it up, he had pulled the steering wheel down with him, causing him to veer over and went through the work zone. And that's where he hit and killed my dad. And getting the phone call from the DOT telling me that I needed to get to the hospital, that my dad was just hit on the highway, it's something that you can't even imagine how you would feel. I started to scream and, was like, well, what happened? Is he dead? Is he in a coma? What happened? And he said, Karen, you just need to get to the hospital. And I was like a lunatic. I was running up and down my stairs because I honestly didn't know what I was supposed to do first. And my husband took me and put me in the car, and this 15-minute drive felt like an hour. And we pulled into the emergency room and I saw the ambulance and 2 Suffolk County police cars, and, my heart sank. And as I walked up to the door, there was a nurse waiting for me, and she said, "Are you Patrick's daughter?" And I said, "Yes." And she put her arm around me and I said, "Oh my God, my father's dead. My father's dead. He's dead." And then I saw my sister walking down the hallway with these doctors, and I just ran over to her, and you feel like you're so outside your body. Because I had just spoke to my dad 14 hours ago because it was his birthday, and I wished him a happy birthday. We were making plans for him to come over on Sunday. And now here we are on Friday, and now you're telling me he's dead. And the doctor was trying to speak to me, and I cut her off and I said, I want to go see him. And she said, no, Karen, you can't. And I said, why? I want to say goodbye to my dad. And she said, you can't. And I said, why? So they explained what happened to him. And they had said that, my dad and his crew were out filling in the potholes. And we all know anytime that there's a crew on a highway, there's always the DOT truck that has the attenuator in the back. And so the driver that was in that truck from the side view mirror could see the cement truck starting to veer to the right. So he started wailing on the horn and just started screaming for everyone to run. And the workers couldn't see what was happening. So they all ran to the left, but my dad ran to the right, literally right into the path of the truck. The driver of the cement truck told me that when he looked up, my dad actually locked eyes. And then my dad stopped to try to shield himself from the impact. And every time I share that part, I vision myself as my dad because I know exactly where he was hit. And he saw the whole thing coming. And that's really hard to hear and to know that he looked up and saw this bright orange cement truck driving right at him. And my dad was hit. He went up through the wheel well and he was thrown in the air like a rag doll. The witnesses that were driving by said they saw a man tossing in the air like a rag doll. And when he landed, he was completely disfigured from the top of his head to the tip of his toes. And that's why they wouldn't let me go see him. They said, please just remember your dad the way he was. But because my dad left his wallet in the work truck that morning, they still needed a family member to ID him. And because they wouldn't let me, my brother, or my sister do it, my husband had to do it. He said, Karen, the nurse brought me into the room and your dad was in the body bag on the gurney. And she brought me over and she unzipped it just enough to take out Dad's arm. He said, I held his hand for a little bit and, he still felt a little warm. He said, I knew it was Dad because my dad had arthritis. We had the bigger knuckles. He said, but for you, I knew I needed to be 100% sure. So he asked the nurse to unwrap his face. And my husband has always said from that moment, his mind has been forever fractured. That poor man had nightmares for 1.5 years of what he saw. I mean, I read my dad's 5-page autopsy report to the injuries of his body. And, my poor husband had to, see that. And I mean, it took him, after having all these nightmares, he had to go see a special doctor to help him get the images out of his head. And, it's just so sad because my dad was, he was 7 months away from retirement, and that was all taken away from him because of somebody simply just going to pick up a water bottle. We don't realize that we're going to, you could kill someone in 2 seconds. That's all it takes. Honestly, it doesn't matter how long we've been driving. What matters is those seconds that we choose to take our eyes off the road to do something else. That's truly what matters. And I always share that, my dad, the man that killed my dad, was not a young, inexperienced driver. He was a retired New York City fireman. So he spent his entire career saving lives, right? And that one poor choice he made that day, that one really bad mistake, he has to live with the fact that he killed my dad. And he didn't go to jail. He was given a 90-day license suspension. I was given an urn with ashes, and he was given a 90-day license suspension. But he told me that my father's face is the first person he sees when he wakes up and the last person he sees before he goes to bed. So to me, that prison sentence is in his mind because he's got to see that every day, every single day. And, after the crash, and it took me about 4 years, I never liked public speaking, I'll be honest. And I had this unbelievable desire to share Dad's story because people would say to me, God, Karen, every time I'm in a work zone, I always think about you and I always think about your dad and I always slow down. I'm like, really? And then it just was like, I gotta talk about it. And knees knocking. My first group was a bunch of 9th graders. I was so scared.
Wow.
I was so scared. But it's amazing when you have such a passion for change and you need to do it. Like it's just amazing what you do. And that's what I do now. And I go around and I share Dad's story with the hopes I can impact, one person in a room, to slow down and to pay attention.
You have there's an event here where we're gathering today
Yes.
with all of us, and this is a training event for DOT employees here in the Utica area. How do you shift that story so that they understand too their own role in this too? Is that what you're trying to share here?
Absolutely, because, safety isn't just 9 to 5 or when you're at work, right? It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in my own opinion, I feel that, we're driving long periods of time, right? Or after we start driving, many years, we become a little laxed, right? Oh, I've done this a million times. I could do it another time. So I'm here really today to say that, you know what, it just takes that 1 second. It doesn't matter how long you've been driving. You can't be lax. You have to be on your game. And I think they can relate to me because they are on the road, right? So they are workers. They know what I'm talking about. It's all about situational awareness.
Let's bring Cody into the discussion. Cody, first of all, let's talk for a moment about what today's training is that we're at, that Karen's going to be speaking at, and what you hope for. Obviously we know what Karen is hoping for, but what you hope these guys and gals get out of today's training, of any type of training.
Yeah, first of all, Josh, Anya, thank you for having me here. Karen, it's an honor to be to be here with you. Today's training, we hold these statewide annually, twice a year. We have our spring and fall safety meetings for all the highway maintenance workers. And really in the spring, it's time to transition from winter, snow and ice, where our folks are out there, plowing the roads every day, 7 days a week sometimes when we get those big snowstorms, to going out and actually working in the work zones and having those quote unquote boots on the ground. So we like to get in front of all the folks, reiterate the safety, right, and not be complacent, because we can't get complacent out in the work zones, because we do have over 200 work zone intrusions annually statewide, just DOT, and that's 200 way too many, and that's why we hold these safety meetings, so we can make sure our folks remember and start thinking about being back in the work zones and having their heads on a swivels. I've been there. I started my career here at the DOT in highway maintenance, and I remember standing on the highways and those tractor trailers going by you at 80 miles per hour. And
if you've never been, and I guess most people haven't, unless your car gets you're off on the side of the road. When you're out there, whether it's that or for a disabled vehicle, when those cars come flying, man, they are jarring.
You move.
You have to. The whole car shakes. And then as you said, if it's a truck or an 18-wheeler, it is a jarring experience. And it's funny you bring that up, and we were going to talk about this also, but just recently the new move over, the add-on to the new move over law for everyone. I think it's so important that people do that, whether it's a work zone, whether it's just a car with a person on the side of the road with a flat tire. This
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
Absolutely. And I'll never forget one time just looking, and that if you made one bad step or tripped and you fell into that active lane, there's nothing that's going to save you. So it's important that we get out in front of all of our workers and make sure that we talk safety, we preach safety, and from our commissioner down, that is, safety is number one here at the DOT, and we make sure that we represent that when we come out to these meetings.
And I think it's important, from the one hand, from them being out there, but on the other hand, these are men and women who drive to work.
Absolutely.
And for work, taking their vehicles out, whether it's a plow, whether it's a dump truck, taking some major vehicles out on the road that, yes, we're talking about all this for your safety, but at the same time, you are also members of the public when you're not working, or even when you are working, you need to make sure that you're keeping everyone else safe also.
Absolutely. That's their job, right? They're keeping the roads safe so that you can keep them safe as you're driving through the highways, right? That's what you want to preach. They're out here working in their quote unquote office to keep the roads safe so you can get to where you're going to your destination safe. So we ask that you just be safe driving through these work zones so they can make it home at the end of the night. That is the goal.
That's right. These are members of our community. They're our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors. Our kids go to school with their kids. It's really important to remember that. And there's one event coming up, to the Workers' Memorial event. And while that's a solemn moment in remembrance of fallen highway workers, it's also a time set aside to really get that message out about safety. Can you talk a little bit about the event and what that is like for everyone who attended?
So in 2021, Governor Hochul introduced the Workers' Memorial at the New York State Fairgrounds in Syracuse. And since then, the past 3 years, we've been doing our annual Workers' Memorial event, our ceremony at the State Fairgrounds. And why do we do it? We do it for your father, right? We want to remember everyone that's given their life here working at the DOT. And not even the DOT, not only the DOT, but the Thruway and our contractors. So last year we brought the Thruway in, and we asked the Thruway to be part of our event, which was a successful event to where, when I say successful, we teamed up and we had our monument there, and we had our vest, and we had a plaque for everyone that has fallen, DOT and Thruway. And we just remember the selflessness and the service that everyone that has fallen while working on the highway has given, and it's time that we can take a moment to remember what they've done and hopefully get the message out there for folks to be safe while driving through our work zone. And we have guests, we have guests that come and speak there, so it's a very humbling moment at the State Fairgrounds when we do this.
The monument is simple but meaningful and beautiful in many ways. Describe what's on it. The work boots and
so it's your typical highway maintenance workers tools, right? They got their boots, their hard hat, and their shovel. That's what you think of when you're driving down the road and you think of a highway maintenance worker, right? And that's what's on the top of this monument, and it signifies the hard work and dedication these folks do out in the road.
So, Cody, you mentioned, obviously how poignant the memorial is, but I think it's also poignant where it is. It's at the State Fairgrounds in Syracuse. Talk about why it is, why we placed it there.
Yeah, I think it's important that it's there. It's the State Fairgrounds, right? Annually, for the fairgrounds themselves, close to 1 million New Yorkers, folks from all over the country, come to the State Fairgrounds there. So. During that 2-week or 3-week event at the State Fairgrounds, 1 million folks, and then annually 2 million visitors visit the fairgrounds. And if we can have 2 million visitors go to the fairgrounds and see the bronze boots, shovels, and hard hat, and just read the plaque and just think, it's just that extra education piece that we can get out there, and those 2 million people start talking and tell their family and friends, and annually we can have that. So it's important that it's right at the State Fairgrounds.
Right. Maybe anyone who's visiting this summer, they can swing by and talk with their kids about it and why it's there and the importance of it.
Absolutely.
We talk about this and we'll continue to talk about this because it's not as if it's something that's getting better. Unfortunately, when you look at the numbers, it's a sobering reality that's just the case. And, I think when it comes to distracted driving, there's more distractions than ever for drivers nowadays. And you start to look at the numbers in 2023. So last year, the State Department of Transportation experienced 214 work zone traffic intrusions while constructing either capital projects or performing highway maintenance activities. There were nearly 200 crashes in thruway work zones, leading to 37 injuries. And again, the majority of these crashes are caused by what? Distracted driving or following too closely, unsafe lane changes, or just frankly disregarding traffic warning signs. You look at those numbers, and this is not a new thing, and unfortunately, it's not a thing that seems to be on the up and up. So when you hear these numbers, especially Karen, for you knowing what you go through every year this time, Cody, for you knowing how important this is, what are those numbers? What do they mean to you?
It's tragic. These numbers are outrageous, in my opinion. 214 last year. I get every single one of those work zone notifications as soon as it happens, and my heart stops every time that email comes through or that phone call happens. And it's terrible. In the department, we try to do as much as we can to make sure that our work zones are safe. If it's Operation Hard Hat, putting our cameras in the work zones, and the move over law, making folks to move over every time they drive past a highway maintenance crew on the road, or just the education, right? Just educating folks on what they need to do while they're driving through a work zone. If it's going out to high schools, talking driver education, our folks do that. If it's being at these meetings like Karen's doing and talking, and getting out in front of the general public and talking, it's that education piece, because that's what we need to do, is educate the general public.
Yeah, Karen, the move over law was not in place around the time that your father died.
Correct.
In that horrible accident. What would you like people to understand about this law? That it's not so much punitive. I mean, it's more just like a call to action, maybe.
Right. It's also an extra layer of protection for whoever's on the side of the road. Highway workers, they're inches away from cars and from trucks. It's important. I'll say this. Driving up to Utica from Long Island yesterday, I saw a disabled car, and they had their flashers on, and I was the only one that moved over.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it made me sad. It really made me sad. And as far as education, I think it's so true. It's also on the parents. We can't just expect, someone to go into a classroom, right, and talk about it. The parents really, really need to speak to their children every time that they're driving or even when they start driving. So, I always say our kids are in our driving school for the first 16 years of their life, right? So we need to be talking to them about moving over, paying attention, slowing down.
That's a good point. We are the example.
Absolutely.
Even when they're really little, sitting in the back seat,
Yes.
they hear us, they feel what's going on in the back seat. They get an understanding and an education at an early age.
They do. When my dad had died, my youngest daughter was almost 2. And she knew that anytime she heard my phone ring, she would say, you're not allowed to answer that. So
Good
it
for
was
her.
like, right. So it's like it's repetitive, and it's, again, they mirror our behavior. So just talk to them. Everybody's just got to do the right thing. Everybody wants to go home. Everybody, it's somebody's child that's out there. Yeah, maybe if the law was in place, maybe my dad would be here. I don't know. But I'm sure glad it is here.
It was not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, I believe, that the commissioner was up in Rochester for an event, and it was right at the start of, National Work Zone Awareness Week. And one of the things that came up was the automated work zone speed monitoring pilot program, which started last year and is continuing on. And just some of we talk about the sobering numbers. Some of the statistics from that were staggering. I mean, they were in Rochester, where on one road there were, I think, 4 different people were going over 100 miles an hour in a work zone.
yes.
Regardless of the fact you're not supposed to do that on the road,
That's
in a work
awful.
zone, including, I think the most was 130
Yes.
some odd?
One was clocked to,
139. Right,
Wow.
right in my backyard on 104. Yep.
That's absolutely absurd. And forget about in a work zone, just in general, and then in a work zone on top of that. I mean, these are things that it's common sense. It's common sense, and it really is. For people who are doing that, it's selfish. It's 100% selfish, not thinking about the people who are out there. The people who are out there doing that work, it's not an inconvenience. That's how we look at, it's just, I got to slow down.
Exactly.
It's not an
Right.
inconvenience. They are, A, helping you
Right.
to clean the roads, and B, an inconvenience. This is people's jobs. This is what they do. This is their work. This is their livelihood, and the lack of respect for that, I think, is it's unfortunate, and it's something that, and I know, Karen, that's why you continue to do this, and Cody, why we continue to talk about this and mention this, and it unfortunately doesn't look like it's trending in the right direction, but I know you and Cody, you as well, and us, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't remain the case.
And that's why we continue to do these initiatives, and we start these initiatives, and new ones continue to come, and we try to continue to build new initiatives. When we started Operation Hard Hat back in 2019, I remember telling the trooper, I said, I'm not sure if we're going to get many tickets. How many tickets are we really going to get?
Oh.
And he told me, he goes, I bet you a paycheck that within the first 2 minutes we'll have somebody. And I didn't know what to think, right? When I asked to do this program, Operation Hard Hat, I was like, I want to educate. I want folks to think about if it's a trooper, a sheriff, a police officer in our work zone, or is it a highway maintenance worker?
Right.
They don't know. So if they just think that, maybe they'll slow down. And the first car, and I'm not lying, the first car that drove through our work zone was on their cell phone, no seatbelt, and they got 2 tickets as they drove through.
Crazy.
I remember hearing a
Unbelievable.
story about a state trooper was on the road and immediately had to pull someone over, turned around to the other side of the road, parked, immediately had to go that direction. I mean, it was just back and forth and back and forth. And for those who don't know, Operation Hard Hat, that is where state troopers or local officials, sheriff's departments are
dressed up as
they
highway workers.
look like highway workers and are there to enforce the law. And it has been. Successful is a weird word to use for it. It's been needed.
Yeah, I think success is 0.
Yes,
right.
that would be true.
We're never going to get 0. Last year was over 3,000 citations issued through our work zones during Operation Hard Hat. So we want those numbers to go down, but that's the education piece, and we will continue as long as I'm here, is continue to educate and educate and educate.
Thanks so much. And that's the reason why we're getting the word out again today. And it's not just for highway workers, too. It's for motorist safety as well. And that's something like if you're going 139 miles per hour through a work zone, chances are you're not playing it safe for yourself as well.
It's just selfish. It's just really, really, really selfish. I think that technology's become so amazing inside the car that we all forget right outside our windshield, right? We become blind to what's right outside our windshield, right? And that, of course, is highway workers and other, motorists and bicyclists and people who are exercising or kids that are playing. In an instant, you could take someone's life away.
And the other thing is, it's not just their life that you're affecting, Karen, and you are proof of that. It's families.
Yes,
it's everyone they know. It's the other workers, at that site. I'm sure they, didn't sleep well for a long time.
They couldn't go back to work for months after.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So just the ripple effect is massive.
Yes.
It's just massive.
Absolutely, 100%. When you go to work, you create like a work family.
Mm-hmm.
So could you imagine witnessing that? It's awful.
No, I would imagine the loss is profound, it's deep, and it lasts a lifetime.
A lifetime. Never goes away. Never.
Well, we certainly, cannot thank you both enough for coming. Karen, I know that you speak about this all the time. I have a sneaking suspicion it does not get any easier to speak about each and every time. And so, the fact that you're willing to come out here and speak as often as you are, I think you're heading to Iowa?
I am.
Heading to Iowa immediately after this to speak to more people, but it's so important, and the fact that you've taken some time out to speak with us about it, we cannot thank you enough.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
You are so welcome.
And Cody, we always enjoy chatting with you whenever we see you in Albany, and thanks again for sitting down with us here today too.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Before we leave you today, we want to thank all of our dedicated and hardworking DOT highway workers who put their own safety on the line so that we can get to our destination safe. We truly appreciate you, and thanks for all the work you do.
Absolutely, and we ask motorists simply slow down, move over, put down your phone, pay attention, right? Your community is our community. We're all in this together. We're all pulling the rope in the same direction. They're helping make the road safe for you, help make the work safe for them.
That's right. And by the way, it's the law. Why would you want to pay a fine when you can just give our workers the room they need to do their job safely? Why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to this episode. You can always find us wherever you find your podcasts. Love to hear from you. Send us a note. Drop us a line. podcast@dot.ny.gov is our email. You can also message us through your podcast app. Drop us a note, give us a like if you enjoy what you're hearing, let us know what you would like us to chat about in the future. So, for Anya, I'm Josh. Until next time, we'll be right here on the DOT BOD.